Now, James is here because James has written Start Your Business in 7 Days, Turn Your Business Idea into a Life-Changing Success, the latest book from James Caan. And let me say right away, this is not the book that you think it is. In fact, it's a sort of misleading title. I can understand why the publishers might market it as a kind of a self-help book, but actually it isn't. So you explain, James, in your own words what this is.
Simon, well, firstly, I'm delighted that you did actually read the book and you thought it was useful. When I was writing the book, one of the things that was my key focus is this is not about, become the next Google or the next Facebook. This is a realistic and a practical sharing of experiences that I've gained over the last kind of 30 years of building businesses and also having seen nearly 1,000 presentations from Dragon's Den, it's given me an insight to what I think actually works. So what I've tried to do is take somebody on the journey to say, is this a hobby? Is this an idea? Is this a business? Will this ever make money? And show people how you go through that journey, whether it's, the lady in Liverpool that's come up with this amazing kind of idea for a new soup, or whether it's somebody who's got a passion and an idea that they want to start a business, but they're just not sure, is this something that's commercially viable?
Okay, so what isn't it? Because you can narrow this down.
Yeah, it's not one of these, I'll make you rich in 7 days. It's not kind of... it's all going to make you successful overnight. It's not that kind of journey. It's practical, it's realistic, and it uses real-life examples of things that have actually happened that I give very detailed illustrations. There's more how than what in here.
Yeah, and so, you give examples in the book of people who have spent a lot of money. I mean, a serious amount of money, and
hundreds of thousands of pounds,
an awful lot of time coming up with an idea that was never ever going to fly. So, for people like that, if they think that they've got a great idea, put it to this test, and then at the end of it, you might think, well, in the Dragon's Parlour, you're either in or you're out.
And I use that term a lot in the book, because what I'm trying to do here, Simon, is making sure that people don't waste their time or their money on something that just isn't going to work, because I want people to have a good chance of success. Let's be honest, 90% of businesses that start off do end up failing. And if I can make a difference to that statistic and give people some practical guidance that means they've got a much better chance of success, I know the book has worked.
Okay, a question which occurred to me as I was reading all the examples, some great people and inspiring people, and some people who had an idea and it just didn't quite work. Can a good idea fail?
Absolutely, it can.
So therefore, can a bad idea succeed?
Yes, it can, because the key ingredient to success and failure is the person, not the idea. It is absolutely crucial to remember it is people who make businesses successful, not ideas.
But, okay, I'm surprised that you said that, just because if I have a rubbish product, not a rubbish product, but, an indifferent product, but I'm a great salesman, or I'd fit very well in your company, surely you would think, well, can I have you and not the product?
No, I mean, listen, a bad idea is still a bad idea. If it's never going to work as a concept, absolutely, it's dead before it starts. But I think it's fair to say, if it was mediocre, if the concept and idea made sense and it was viable, could a bad person fail it? Yes, they could. If a mediocre... I mean, for example, I remember a particular business that I invested in. I thought the idea was mediocre. It wasn't rocket science. It wasn't brain surgery. It was just a normal concept that I didn't really get massively excited by, but I fell in love with the individual. I bought into the passion, the drive, the determination. This individual come over from America. He'd relocated for me to launch this concept. And literally, he could have made that work from a phone box. So that, for me, was in 1992. And in the penny drop, if you back the right people, even mediocre ideas become very successful.
Are you... some people clearly, in the way that there might be a born sportsman or there might be a born teacher, you're a born entrepreneur, it seems to me. I mean, that was your family tradition. Your dad was an entrepreneur. You learnt from him. You've either got it or you haven't.
Having said that, I've backed a number of people in Dragon's Den who were not natural entrepreneurs. It wasn't in their DNA. It wasn't their background. They fell into an idea that they fell in love with, and they felt they had the passion and drive to make something work. So do I believe that people can become entrepreneurs because of, coincidence or a situation or an event in their life? The answer is absolutely right. If you look at the guy who launched McDonald's, he was 63 when he launched McDonald's. Was he really a natural entrepreneur?
Yeah. So give us an example of the kind of tests and the kind of questions that you're going to ask people. Then if someone's got a germ of a good idea, they're not quite sure what to do about it, they think they might be able to get some money, but you're saying, OK, well, here are the questions that you need to be asking yourself before you actually waste your time or invest your time, whichever way you want to see it. What are the sort of questions that we need to be asking, James?
I mean, I think the key thing here is if you've got an idea, you can either spend a year developing the idea, developing a prototype, getting, let's say, a patent registration. Let me give you a simple example. One of the businesses that I invested in was something called Motor Mouse, which is an amazing idea of a racing car which became a cordless mouse. Now, let's say if you've got an idea like that, you can either go down the journey of saying, let me kind of spend my life fortune on developing the concept, or could I just walk in to Toys R Us and buy, a replica car, go to a potential buyer and say, if I could develop that into a cordless mouse, is that something you might be interested in selling? And if so, what would be the price point you would sell that at? Now, look at the difference there. I believe that buyers are very sophisticated. They know what they're buying. They will get it immediately to say, you know what, we would love to have an executive toy as a motor car, and we could sell that for $29.95. We'd need to buy it from you for £12. Now, you could literally... So what I'm saying is, rather than spending time, money on patents and developing and prototypes, take the concept and idea to the buyer, pitch him the concept, because if he says no, I've just saved you hundreds of thousands of pounds and a huge amount of time, because I think sometimes we over-engineer ideas, we overdevelop them before we have the confidence to take them to market.
So you wouldn't be impressed if I'd actually, if instead of just pitching that general idea to you, I had actually made that car and I'd made it into a mouse and I'd spent a lot of money doing it?
I wouldn't, because what happens if I say no? You've got nothing to show for that years of investment.
OK, yeah, now you've broken it to me very harshly, and I understand what you're saying. This idea of starting your business 7 days, just trying to work out whether you are made for this idea, if it's going to work, if you can make it fly. Does it matter what your age is, James? I mean, clearly someone who's young and thrusting and wearing great clothes, does that impress? Or if someone came to you and they were 62 and they just had an idea, and does age matter at all?
It absolutely does not matter. One of the biggest restaurant businesses in the world is KFC. They've got nearly 27,000 stores in the world, and the guy who started that, Colonel Saunders, was 76 years old. It just goes to show you it really doesn't matter. What matters is the concept of your idea, your passion, your drive, and the way you think through a particular idea. It's got to make sense, it's got to be commercially viable, and it has to be profitable.
I want to ask you about one other issue, which you might touch on in the book, but I haven't seen it, and that's the idea of luck. Ed Smith, former international cricketer, and I think he's a Times leader writer, and he's written this book called Luck, and it's an exploration of the concept of luck or good fortune. How much of being a good businessman or good businesswoman and being in the right place at the right time is this idea of okay, you've had the product, lots of other people have thought about it, but you thought of it at the right time with the right people around you or with the right company or whatever. Do you subscribe to that, or do you think there's no such thing as luck?
No, I do believe in luck, and I do think it does exist, but I also think that you create your own luck. So, could I win the lottery and not buy a ticket? No. I have to buy the ticket first. So I create the opportunity. So I think if you want to become lucky, you have to create the opportunity to be lucky. So I think it's a combination of circumstances, but I think it's a combination of you and your activity. You can't just be sitting with an idea at home and hoping it will come to life by itself. You have to make the first step.
So have you been lucky?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was, one of the things that I think about is I'm in a family of 7, and I'm probably the most successful out of the 7. Why is that? We all started at the same time. We had the same parents. We had the same upbringing. So what is it that made it different for me? So maybe there's an element of luck in there, but then I look back on my life and say, well, but each of those situations, I did something that created the opportunity. So, for example, why did I get into Dragon's Den? There were a number of people who could have done the show, but they selected me. But I was there with the right background, with the right experience. So I think it's a combination.
What difference did it make to you? I mean, after a while, you must get obviously fed up with people pitching stuff to you all the time. In fact, you mention it in the book. People, you're in a queue on the motorway. People tap on your car window and say, "I've got this idea, James. Can you help me?" But it must have made a big difference, because not only were you a successful businessman, but you were famous and recognised everywhere.
I mean, there's no question. I think Dragon's Den, without a doubt, did change my life. I mean, from going to being just a successful entrepreneur to literally walking to restaurants or being stopped in the street. I mean, it does absolutely change your life. And, all of a sudden, if I'm out with my children, I get stopped and they think, "Oh, Dad, cringe, cringe, cringe." So, it did change my life. But, I really genuinely enjoyed it because I chose to do it. There's no point whinging about being recognised when it was your decision to go on television. So I took it, really gracefully. I enjoyed it. And I think as an experience, I would put it down to one of the best experiences of my career.
This point from Anthony on an email. Simon, James suggested pitching to a business without a patent. What is to stop the company you're pitching to from stealing the idea?
I think personally, it goes back to my philosophy, which is products themselves do not just succeed. If you've designed something that's your baby, it's your passion, it's your idea, I'm just not convinced that somebody can just listen to it and 10 minutes later replicate the idea. I believe if somebody could rip off your idea that quickly, they're going to do it anyway. And I think patents are so easy to get round that I'm just not a big fan of them.
Nicholas Smith on this text, James, retailers like Toys R Us won't see an inventor without a working model. I know because I'm currently trying, and that still costs a few £1,000s.
I mean, I think, to be honest, you can do that. You can go down the journey. The problem is it doesn't cost a few £1,000s. By the time you build a prototype and get it registered and get it logged, it can take months. Now, Toys R Us are probably one of the toughest markets to get into because they dominate that space. I still believe I probably wouldn't go and invest all that money on something unless I knew the market genuinely had an interest for that product.
It's the budget tomorrow, and there'll be a lot of top-flight analysts telling us how the economy is doing, and the Chancellor will tell us, and the Shadow Chancellor is going to say his thing. What's your perspective? Are we coming out of the recession? Do you see green shoots, or is it pretty grim? Are you optimistic, James?
I'm optimistic. I'm not sure that right now I can see evidence of us coming out. I think it's a lot of hot air. I think, to me, as a pragmatic entrepreneur, if we're going to come out of this recession, I need to see some real fundamental drivers that tell me why we're doing that. The only thing I'm seeing right now that I have a little bit of confidence in, I think the Olympics will make a difference to the economy. I think because the strength of the economy is very much about sentiment. We have to feel good about what we're doing. We have to feel good about our businesses. Right now, there's not a lot of good out there that encourages us to invest. I think with the Olympics and the whole euphoria, millions of people in our country spending money, I think consumer spending will go up, hotel accommodation will go up.
And the Golden Jubilee as well, Mike.
There's a lot happening in England that I think gives us hope, and I think they may become the catalyst that will give us a little bit of encouragement to see some positive activity out there. But hopefully, just remember, recessions come and go, economies go up and down. We're just, to me, bubbling along the bottom. But I do think in the longer term, we will see a recovery, probably not this year, but I'm certainly optimistic that 2013, we should start to see some signs of recovery.
James Caan's book is Start Your Business in 7 Days. James, thanks very much. I appreciate you coming in.
Thank you, Simon. Enjoyed it.